appears to be working. It's red, so it means it should be happening.
Says waiting for St. Croix Falls School District.
All right, Kirk says we're good, Rita, you might be a little behind.
Now we got her.
I see it.
Apologies for the technical difficulties.
No, apologies for that, we have not missed anything, we have not started the meeting. So I'll get started, I'll call the committee portion of the meeting together. It is 5:22. We'll start with the discussion of the recommended updates to the staff handbook.
Okay, so I'll walk you through those fairly quick. Most of the changes that are being tossed around are fairly minor. I did provide you a handy page reference in your board update, which aligns to the PDF of the document they had attached to the board book. So first off on page 3, simply strike the name of the superintendent. It is the board's handbook technically that administration is supposed to enact. And then whenever you do end up with a new superintendent, whether that be in the relatively near future or the very long future, you don't ever have to go back and change that on the handbook. So fairly minor recommendation there. I'm going to speed you ahead then to page 15. On page 15, the recommendation there is to strike the board offices, strike Doc Bont, who is no longer a board member, and add Dawn, and then alphabetize the listing such that you don't have to continually update the handbook when new board offices are elected. When we have a new board member, we would have to update that information, but we don't have to keep changing around the offices. Your contact information is there, and it would remain current on the district website. So it's really just to not, have to update that every time there's a change in the board. And then we'll go all the way to page 63.
Can I stop you real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Just since we're on it, my phone number is incorrect.
Okay?
You want me to
No,
give it to you now or later?
we'll get it squared away.
Yep, sounds good.
I know I have your correct number, so I'll just verify it. Okay? Now we'll jump you to 63. The admin team really liked it when I just took my time scrolling through these pages.
It was riveting.
And so on 63, it's subsection 9.03, sick leave accumulation. That sick leave earned is cumulative to 105 days. Now keep in mind, the only thing that we're recommending a change in is highlighted there in red, and then I took the liberty of highlighting in yellow. Red writing highlighted in yellow, just so it's easier to see. And we're modifying that to read that it should be the employee, be notified by the employee of this in writing, no later than the last day of school for the regular school year, and that it will not count towards the 6 accumulated days. In speaking with Lorraine, that's been the practice. So it's really not a change, it's a change better reflecting reality. Questions on that? And then I'm going to bring you to 66. On 66, if you recall, through the duration of last year, we made a modification to a couple of different things. Those changes are reflected here in the handbook. One of them had to do with personal business leave and whether or not, what amount staff members, professional staff members are charged to use that personal business leave. And we had reduced that instead of the cost of a sub to 1/2 the cost of a sub. So we simply are inserting the words 1/2 of the to update that language. And I'll just keep moving along unless you have a question, so jump in anytime. Now we're going to fly all the way to page 90 of said handbook. And on page 90, that's where there's recommended changes to compensation for schedule overload. The original language is there and stricken, so you can see how it originally read. And then the new language is, of course, highlighted in yellow and in red font. So I'll walk you through what the scenario was. There was a delineation between the block schedule, which is 4 periods per day, and then 7 or 8 period schedule, which throughout the history of the organization, there's been multiple permutations of schedules. And what ended up transpiring is at some point, I think an argument was made that having overload on a block is way harder than having an overload on a 8 period day or a 7 period day. And it used to be, the old language indicated that if you had an overload on a 7-period day, you'd get $1,000, and if you had an overload on an 8-period day, you'd get $1,500. But if you had an overload on a block, you'd get $2,250. So that was carved out on that sentence that's stricken under the paragraph. The thought process for me, and as well as talking with the administrative team, is that if you're on an overload, that basically means you do not get a prep. So think about it in terms of, I have a schedule where I start at this time, I end at this time. Typically built into there is some amount of time for prep period, meaning getting ready for your courses. And that can range anywhere from as little as 30 minutes to as much as 90 minutes, all depending upon the schedule. I would say 90 minutes is rare, usually it's 45 or 60 because there's on the block, there's a duty assigned or something like that. But we carve out time, and this is from time immemorial that I'm aware of, where teachers were provided prep. And in the old days, that would have been reflected in the collective bargaining agreement back in the union days. And then, if you have a staff member, excuse me, a teacher that was teaching an overload, meaning they lose their prep. So they're teaching 8 out of 8, 7 out of 7, 6 out of 6, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 4, it doesn't matter. They would get some additional compensation for that because the school of thought would be that they're going to do the work that they're supposed to be doing on their, that they would have been doing on their prep period, preparing for classes and so forth. They'd be technically doing that on their own time, right, outside of the school day. And the language was a little bit confusing because it said classes beyond 6 for an 8-period day, and that doesn't really make sense because classes beyond 7 in an 8-period day would be considered an overload because, again, if you teach 7 out of 8 periods and one block is open, you just wouldn't get assigned to duty, so that would be your prep. If you teach 6 out of 7, the 7th period that you didn't teach would be not a duty assigned, it would be a prep. So any combination of either directed by an administrator, you're doing this during this period of time, which happens to supervising a win, lunch duty, study halls, that kind of thing, are sometimes considered duties. But we look at their schedule. And generally what this wording change would be changing it to is, instead of this confusing if it's this kind of period day or this kind of period day, it's generally if you teach or have duties for an entire day, from start to finish, and you have no prep, you're eligible for an overload, and the recommendation is just to allow that to be $2,250 across the board. The school of thought being is an overload's an overload. And frankly, I think I could make a solid argument, having taught on an 8-period day, 7 preps in an 8-period day, and then I'd go sub that was by choice, that other period when I was first starting out in teaching. And I would much rather prep and do 4 classes than prep and do 8 classes. See what I'm saying? So I don't see the corollary that doing an overload on a block is so much more difficult to warrant a delineation and compensation versus an overload on a 6, 7, or 8-period day. So generally, and I'll reiterate, we would handle everybody the same, and this is of course applicable to middle and high school. Elementary, it's self-contained, so you have your own classroom, it's a little different ball of wax. If you're teaching the full day or you have a duty, you're eligible for an overload. That language or that element of it isn't really changing anything. That's basically been the interpretation. Although the 6 out of, or teaching beyond 6 periods in an 8-period day, that doesn't make sense because you would technically have 2 additional periods in there, and that's technically not an overload. So that's a cleanup. I'm hoping that wasn't super confusing, but any questions?
You good? All right, moving on.
Okay, now we'll jump you to page 95. And this is the portion where some significant substantive changes are being proposed. Rather than strike and replace to avoid confusion, I took all of the old retirement language that you can see there under section 9.01 retirement benefit and 9.02 alternate HRA retirement health reimbursement arrangement benefit, and struck those. Packed them all together in what I'm recommending that appears now on page 96, which is a conglomeration of technically the 2 or 3 things we were engaged in prior. And to avoid confusion, what I'll do is just draw your attention to the first stricken portion which had applied in the old days, so I'm back up to 9.01 in the retirement benefit. And that was the circumstance in which you had 15 years of service to the district, you're 55 years of age, and again, you'll see some of these reflected in the recommended new language. And then you would get payments into an HRA on your behalf based on credits that you've attained in 10-year increments. And then what ended up happening over time, and this is super important, the max benefit that any staff member ever had access to, at least in relative recent history, the last 10, 15, 20 years, was $45,000. Okay? That number's important because you'll see that ultimately that's not going to change. So this is not an enrichment of the benefit, it's simply cleaning up the language, or even a decrease in the benefit. So the max that somebody could get was $45,000. And typically that would have been a human being that's at least 55 and probably has 30 plus years of experience in the district. What ended up happening is that I think there was some key retirements over a period of time where there was some increment very close to 30 years, 26, 27, 28 years, and it wasn't accounted for or a fraction of a 10-year increment or a fraction of a credit wasn't accounted. And so that at some point, language was added to give a portion of credit for less than 10-year increments. And that's where some of this new language had been inserted, where it indicated for teachers whose retirement is effective July 1st, 2021 and prior to July 1st, 2024. So that's where some of the carve-outs in this were incorporated. Or pardon me, that was the July 1st, 2024 and later. No, it wasn't. It was the July 1st, 2021 to July 1st, 2024. And then it was opposite. Okay, my apologies.
24 and
Because it
later.
is confusing, and that's part of why I want to do this. So any human being or staff member that reads the handbook can be like, okay, I can understand and calculate my own retirement. So I guess more fuel to the fire of why the recommendation is valid. So then anyway, there was also another circumstance that was incorporated, which was what the district had shifted to with respect to a $1,500 payment per year for your time here, which technically starts immediately. So if, under the newest iteration, you were 55 years of age and you retired, after working here for 3 years, you'd get $4,500 in an HRA. See what I'm saying? 3 times 1,500. 5 years, 5 times 1,500, 10 years, 10 times. So that was the calculation, which generally was the approach for the majority of staff members that had been, recently hired in the organization, or would be applicable to those folks that are currently employed and or recently hired. What the district then would do is they would identify an individual that was retiring, they would work it through scenario A, and this is Luray in most cases, work the retirement calculation through scenario A, then work it through scenario B, and would apply the retirement calculation where the individual benefited most from said calculation. What you saw in most calculations was that it was, you're not talking, in your calculation A you get $2,000 and in the calculation B you get $40,000. Not like that. It was basically $40,000 or $37,888 or $35,000 or $33,222. And I'm just pulling numbers up, but Luray looked at it with me and I didn't document specific scenarios, but you're talking a few $1,000s. So we erred on the side of whichever the approaches benefited the staff member the most. And that encumbered a handful of staff members because there were staff members that retired the last couple of years. So what I ended up doing in order to create the new language, and the recommendation again is to strike everything above what now you're going to find on the middle of page 96, and insert the language that's recommended here, which incorporates a bit of option A and a bit of option B, plus some clearer or plainer language that result in the same net benefit, and should handle every staff member in a very, very similar or identical fashion. No calculations around percentages. It's all strict $1,500 for 1 year of service, and your eligibility is age 55. and to get we'll go through it. So striking all the language, the handbook would simply say that a teacher can retire at the end of any semester with written notice no later than October 1st for the end of the first semester and March 1st for retirements at the end of the fiscal year. And new language, supervisors may retire at any time by providing 30 days notice or as outlined in their individual contract. This portion of the handbook covers professional staff or licensed staff, so that incorporates supervisors as well. And so that's just making that clear that their individual contract may circumvent or overrule what's listed here, and that the supervisors are required to provide 30 days notice, which is different. That's what the district had been doing. Okay, so then we take and borrow the language that was from above. The board will provide an early retirement benefit as follows. For every school year a teacher supervisor satisfactorily completes in St. Croix Falls School District, they shall earn a credit toward a retirement HRA contribution of $1,500. So that's the $1,500 thing that I'm talking about. They're eligible for a maximum of up to 30 credits. 30 times 1,500 is $45,000. For no more than $45,000. If a teacher supervisor works beyond his or her 30th year in the district, the teacher supervisor shall earn no more credits, which means the max benefit in the old time and in the recommendation is $45,000. But there's a little bit of a caveat, we'll get to that in a second. Then we incorporate language, teachers and supervisors with at least 15 years of service to the district will receive $7,500 for every 30 days of unused accumulated sick leave, up to a maximum of $22,500 upon retirement. The reason that information is in there is if you go back up to the top, 15 years of service was what the prior requirement to the district was to be fully vested, arguably for what the district's benefit would be. That is unilaterally decidable by the board. What I did was float potentially 20 years of service in that regard. The idea being, well, let me finish the rest of the story. If I've worked here 15 years and I get $1,500 times 15 years, that amounts to $22,500. If I've kept the majority of my sick days, 90 plus, I'm also going to get $7,500 for every 30 days of unused accumulated sick leave. I'm also going to get $22,500 for a max total of $45,000. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So when I talked about this with staff for feedback, I had put 20 years in there just as a question to get some feedback. And after getting that feedback, the response from the staff was, I wouldn't say it was complete dissatisfaction with the 20 years, but there was commentary around, well, I do think there's people that have done an excellent job for 18 years or 19 years, and we're super happy that they're here, and we're happy that they would get a decent benefit in that regard and have to stay another year. And then the comment was, well, is there a way to prorate that so that if you have 16 years, it's this, and set, all the way to 20. And I said, frankly, I wouldn't want to. I'm trying to avoid that because there's a lot of these calculations were unnecessary and potentially confusing, so that we try to capture these special circumstances. So after going through that and providing some scenarios, which frankly, if we bumped it to 20, what my rationale was, it would simply, hopefully encourage people to stay a bit longer, but also recognize years of service in a reasonable time frame, 20 versus 30, for example, and provide a little bit of a backdrop for 20-plus year employees to say, well, because technically you can get the full benefit after 15 years of $45,000 if you had received it. See what I'm saying? So I was just trying to meld that together a little bit. After the conversation, I'm like, you know what, forget it. Let's leave it at 15. I don't want to do complicated calculations. And 15 is what it was. So if you look above, 15 years is what you waited for to be fully vested prior. So that's not new, but now that language would stay. So if you are 55, you have at least 15 years of service, and you have sick days, a number of sick days, with a credit of $7,500 for every 30, you could get the full benefit of the $45,000. You work for 30 years and you have 105 sick days in your bank, you get $45,000. If you work 15 years and you have 105 sick days in your bank, you get $45,000. See what I'm saying? So that's part of what I was attempting to rectify with the 20-year recommendation. But I'm scrapping that just because 15 is back to what we had been doing. Then C, the total benefit, time of service and sick leave shall not exceed $45,000. That was true before. It wasn't explicitly stated. as explicit as this. D, teachers and supervisors with at least 30 years of service to the district will receive an additional, this is what a recommendation is for the modification I referenced earlier, payout of accumulated sick leave up to 105 days of $25 per day. The district buys down accumulated sick leave on an annual basis. Is it over 90, Lorraine? Yeah. Any sick days over 90, a staff get paid out $25 per day, and then they get their allotment again, which bumps them back to the 105 on the next year, because we front load those sick days.
Teaching staff.
Yep, teaching staff. So that's why the 105 is there. Now, do most people have 105? The answer to that's probably not, you know, because 105 is the max you could possibly get, and then you get bumped down to your new allotment, and you might take a day or two. That carve out, I'm going to give credit to Rod Zepp, because I have to, he had the conversation with me. And I do think it's a little bit of a delineator for staff members that have basically served their whole career here. You're not going to spend 30 years here and have many years anywhere else, to be completely honest with you. People do, but, and then a little bit extra incentive to not potentially burn up your sick days when you know you're going to retire at the end of, say, this year. Well, gosh, I have 105 sick days and they're just going to kind of go to waste. I might as well burn them up. Based on our circumstance, I wouldn't say that that's a standard approach, but, I mean, staff aren't doing that big time, but they could. And this is a bit of an incentive. At $25 a day, you're talking about $2,600, $2,650, I think is what the number comes out to be. A little bit of incentive to say, hey, hang on to those because we'll give you a little something for them. And then E, already existed before. To be eligible, they have to be 55, they have to be, they earn the credits as outlined above. Full-time teacher who, and that's an example, a full-time teacher who retires from the district at age 55 but who's only worked in the district for 3 years would receive 4,500, 3 credits of 1,500. That's pretty much it. G, a minor modification, a full-time teacher supervisor will earn prorated credits / sick leave in accordance with the percentage FTE. So we're just incorporating to ensure that they recognize that sick leave is also accrued on a percentage basis. If you're half-time, you get half as much. Basically, that's what that calculation is. And then G is stricken because there's no delineation in retirement benefit. This would apply to everybody across the board. Effective when you make your action to approve the changes. Here again, I hope it wasn't terribly confusing, but I'm happy to entertain any questions on that part. And Lorraine, who of course has done this for many more years than I have, in terms of retirement, can probably explain some of these things better if you have questions.
Hey, you guys, I'm gonna go home. I'm embarrassed with all this coughing. I'm so sorry.
Good luck.
Thanks, it's disrupting the whole meeting.
Thanks, Rita.
Sorry.
Is there any questions regarding retirement? All right.
Great. No, there's 3 more. So now we're going to go to page 107, but they're not anywhere nearly as long-winded as that one. Oops. Okay, 107 is a deletion of 5.07 unpaid time off for support staff that are not considered full-time. We don't basically do that anymore. Haven't done that in a long time, so that's getting rid of it. Language that doesn't apply. And then we're going to jump to 109. On 109, you remember we made a modification to the calculation of the long-term substitute rate. So that language is reflected there, with striking some of the old language and adding in, which is the daily rate of BA Step 1. The current rate for substitute less than 20 consecutive days is calculated at 70% of BA Step 1 per day, and the half-day rate is 1/2 of the full-day rate. So, pretty minor modification, but it reflects what we're doing in reality. And you remember likely making that change. And then lastly, I'm going to point you to page 111. And that is a minor modification to sick leave payout at retirement for support staff. You can see the old language there. It was at 95 days. We do allow teaching staff and supervisors to accumulate up to 105 sick leave days. So my recommendation would be just to bump that to 105. They get $50 per day. And simply that's incentive for them to, more incentive to hang on to sick leave days too. Any questions on that? The rest remains largely unchanged. I will be honest with you, there were areas where I made not substantive changes, apostrophes, minor editing that don't change the overall tone or intonation or meaning of the handbook whatsoever. I did not highlight those for obvious reasons.
Any questions regarding the handbook? Of the changes presented? We'll just have the one change for the phone number.
And you'd be asked them to update, to make that official at our next meeting.
Okay, so we have time
Oh, yeah.
then. Okay. Now, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the discuss the early graduation request. There was 3 of them. Oops, did I skip ahead?
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's it.
Okay.
Early grad request, yeah.
Any questions on those? Hearing none, we'll discuss our student representative to the board.
So we just wanted to take an opportunity to welcome Ann. Ann's a senior this year. Mr. Wilson and I met with her and the alternate as well, Jacob. And since this is new, the scenario is such that Ann's here to provide a student viewpoint on topics that are apropos, or frankly, any topic that she feels it necessary to pipe up on. She's welcome to speak at any time. She recognizes that she doesn't vote. She also recognizes that there may be times where we say, hey, is that something you would mind surveying the student body about in some capacity? And she's happy to do that. At least that's what she told us, unless she was lying at the time she met with Mr. Wilson and I. I'm totally kidding. She's awesome. And we have a student rep name tag for her there so that she can participate. And I did also indicate, so for example, like updating of staff handbook, there's times when there's probably not a ton for student feedback, although if she has something to say, game on, you can totally go for it. We are also tossing around, and will likely add, I was thinking to November or December, a student board member update. So that would be a time for, in this case, Ann to share some of the happenings, what's going on in St. Croix Falls High School, or perhaps the district, anything student-related that she wants to share. Cool things about homecoming, for example, or an upcoming student council activity or whatever. And so we will amend the agenda at some point. I thought December would be a reasonable time frame, but if Ann wants to do it sooner, we can do it sooner. And it'll just be a carve-out, student board report, student board update. And Jacob, as the alternate, will attend as he sees fit, and he will communicate. If Ann can't be here, she'll let Jacob know, and Jacob will attend. And then Jacob will assume the rep position next year, and we'll find a new alternate, who will likely be a junior as well. And then we'll kind of do the same thing, so you have a bit of continuity and a backup in the event that whoever the primary is can't attend. And welcome to your first meeting. Super fun, right?
I do welcome you, and I appreciate it. It's been, I think, before COVID, when we had a student representative, and it was always nice to get some feedback from the students too. So I appreciate you doing this. Look forward to hearing from you. And then as far as adding stuff, I don't think anybody has any concerns about adding that to the agenda in the future. No.
Perfect. That is it then.
All right. The discussion of the claim by Deb Kohler.
Yeah, so Deb Kohler, a former employee of ours, sued us in small claims court. And we were provided with, by certified mail, a notice of claim regarding her claim. That's her obligation under state statute if you're going to sue a government entity. A school district is a government entity. That was allowed after our first hearing because of our motion to dismiss based on the fact that we did not receive a proper notice of claim. The court commissioner saw fit, because as a court commissioner, the plaintiff and the defendant have the right to have the case heard before a judge regardless of the outcome. So it's not a retrial, it's not a do-over, it's just that you have that opportunity. And to save the time for the judge, which I think makes a lot of sense, the court commissioner said, I'll give you the opportunity to submit the notice of claim properly, because I would dismiss it and the judge would dismiss it too, because the district makes an excellent point, which is you didn't file a proper notice of claim. So she has done that. In talking with our legal counsel, you are asked to take formal action on denying that notice of claim, because Of course, my viewpoint as well as that of our legal consultant or advice is that there's not a claim here, that we owe nothing to Deborah Kohler. And so I, on behalf of the district, will appear whenever the next hearing happens and provide our information as required, and the court commissioner and or judge will make a decision. I will point out that if it's heard before a court commissioner again, which I'm inclined to think it will be, then there will be the likelihood of another hearing before a judge if we wouldn't necessarily call for that, but Deb Kohler might. And so there's a good potential that we have 2 more of these hearings before it's completely ruled on and done. I don't know when the next hearing will be, but we are supposed to take action, which you'll be asked to do in the board meeting portion to deny that claim. I then mail her the fact that you denied that claim, if you so choose, via certified mail, and from there, I'm guessing we'll get another hearing scheduled. Questions on that?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
All right, the next step, then we'll call the board meeting to order. Start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Matt Bryce.
Here.
Tashina Rager.
Here.
Don Milky. Here. Ronnie Schuler. Brett McCurdy.
Here. Matt, would you mind reading the mission statement and the rules of the meeting?
Sure. The mission of the School District of St. Croix Falls is to provide a supportive, student-centered learning environment that cultivates character, fosters academic excellence, and embraces diversity. The board meeting rules focus on the mission, vision statements of the district. Come prepared. Be respectful of others and open, accepting of ideas. Actively participate. Avoid side conversations. Remember, board meetings are open forum.
Thank you, Matt. We don't have anybody from the public here. No presentations or awards. So we'll just move right into the curriculum and policies, and we'll vote on the 2027 Washington DC/New York City trip that was presented to us last meeting. I'll take a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Matt,
Second.
second by Tashina. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we'll take a motion to deny the claim submitted by Deb Kohler.
I do have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
I should have spoken up earlier, but, okay, so you explained to us before, just kind of a refresher, that, you know, as superintendent, for example, there might be a class where a teacher goes home sick. You're it. You gotta fill in. And you could explain like, yeah, you don't get teacher's pay and your pay. Right, so that's kind of what this is all about, right? Like,
The basis of the claim is that, her claim is that she was led to believe by former principal Darrell Limhoff that she would be paid her interpreter rate and sub rate simultaneously. And that there's no bearing well, from my perspective, there's no bearing of truth in that. The conversation that I had with Shelley Schmitz and Darrell Limhoff would be that she'd be paid the higher of the two, either long-term sub rate or interpreter pay. And the long-term sub rate, unfortunately, was only like 43 cents or 46 cents, and don't quote me on the number, but a smidgen higher than what the interpreter pay was.
yeah.
And so that's the lump sum of the issue, which caused her to walk off the job. Yep.
Any other questions?
Is the claim also for additional time since the individual walked away from the job that they lost income because they chose to step away?
Correct. But also chose not to follow the procedures to request time off or communicate with the supervisor with respect to return or anything. So we parted ways as a result of job abandonment, basically.
Any other questions? So our job here is if we deny it, that just means it's going to go, we're not taking her point of view, right?
If you deny the claim, that means that you agree that what she's suing us for is not correct.
Right.
And then I would appear on behalf of the district to state our case, and judge, court commissioner / judge would render their decision. If you do not deny the claim, then I'm pretty confident it basically means that the district will pay what she's requesting. And I would strongly advise against that. But it's your choice.
I'll take the motion to, I'm asking for a motion to deny the claim. Somebody will-
I'll make the motion to deny the claim submitted by Deborah Fuller.
Motion by Matt,
I'll second.
second by Don. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Doesn't look like we have any announcements. We will just, I'll give a plug for the Star Bingo event on October 11th.
Star Bingo event, I can tell you. Just gotta put it on my calendar. I think October 11th is accurate. October 11th it is, that's Saturday. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the Star Big fundraiser at this point, to replace the gala last year, so. Some other additional upcoming events, we have our regular committee and board meeting September 24th. October 8th will be the committee again, and then October 15th is the WASP regional meeting. I do plan on attending that, Lori. I would encourage any of us to go if we can. And then the next, the annual meeting will be coming up, so keep in mind that is October 27th, that's a Monday, the budget hearing at 5:30, and then the regular, or the annual meeting and school board meeting to set the levy is at 6. Of course, November we'll have a meeting too, on the 12th. All right, Matt, do you want to discuss the rules?
Sure. Yes, so board meeting rules, we focused on the mission and vision statements of the district. We came prepared. We were respectful of others and open and accepting of ideas, actively participated, avoided side conversations, and remembered that board meetings are open forum.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn executive closed session. Adjourn to executive closed session.
I'll make that motion to adjourn the executive closed session.
Thanks to Sheena.
I'll second.
Second by Don. Do a roll call vote.
Matt Bryce,
Yes.
Tashina Rager,
Yes.
Don Milky,
Yes.
Ronnie Schuler, Brett McCurdy.
Yes. All right, we are in closed session. Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you.